Dr. Hohlman?
Yes, and you must be Miss Blackwell. Please, come in. Have a seat and make yourself comfortable. I won't be a moment. How can I help you, Miss Blackwell?
Call me Ava, please. I mean, I'm going to be talking about myself and my life, aren't I? I've seen a lot of therapists in the past few years. But today feels different somehow.
Would you mind removing your glasses? It would be easier if I could see your eyes.
Yes, of course. I wear them so often I forget I have them on. That's me, in 7 years ago. Before all this. It's funny, isn't it? Beauty and ugliness are a lot alike in a way.
How so?
They leave people feeling unsettled somehow.
Can you tell me what happened to your face?
I took 3 bottles of nail polish remover and I poured them over my head. I set myself on fire. I'm sorry. I know it's not funny, but it's like a sick joke, isn't it? I meant to do it. I wanted to suffer. I wanted to escape from myself. Now I'm a monster.
Ava, this is a place without judgment. Whatever you believe about yourself, know that you're safe here.
Am I?
Whatever has happened, you mustn't punish yourself any further.
I promised myself before I came that I would be brave. But I would do the hardest thing.
And what is that?
It's too bright in here.
Ava?
Close the door, please.
I can't see you.
Are you familiar with the word nyctophilia, Doctor?
Yes, it means love of darkness.
I first heard that word a long time ago when I was in a closet just like this. Do you remember?
I don't know what you mean.
Remember the game you showed me? When I was a little girl? The secret game. Pleasure for you. Pain for me.
I don't know what you think you're doing, but I'd like for you to open this door.
Say please.
Please give me the key, Ava.
Say pretty please.
I'm asking you calmly to please give me the key.
Say please, please, please! What's the matter? Don't you like me anymore?
You need help. And I can help you. But I need you to give me the key.
I found it in your desk drawer, right next to some very interesting photographs.
This has gone far enough. You need to put the gun down.
You remember the song you sang to me that day? Just before you held me down. Baby, baby, naughty baby, hush you squalling thing I say. Peace this moment, peace and maybe something wicked comes this way.
Ava, please listen. This isn't going to solve anything.
Get down on your knees.
Ava, please.
Tell me all the things you told me that day. How pretty I am. Sing it like a lullaby.
I'm sorry for what I did.
Oh, whatever did you do?
I abused you.
Tell me what you did to me.
I assaulted you.
Now, Doctor, there's only one word for what you did to me, isn't there? Sing it like you mean it.
I
Look at me.
raped you.
I always wondered what it would be like to hear you say those words out loud. I thought it would be a moment of grace. All my hatred and rage and sorrow would just melt away. But now, looking into your eyes, I see the same lies I saw then. I see evil.
Give it to me!
No!
Ava! We're going to end this now!
Let go of me!
Stop it!
I want you to die! I want you to fucking die!
I'm dead already! You understand? Dr. Hohlman died 5 years ago. He's gone. Remember?
I'm sorry, Dr. Schechter.
We have to stop for today. It's all right. No judgments. I know how much you've suffered, Ava. What matters most is that you don't give up. Soon Dr. Hohlman will be nothing more than a distant memory.
I have a confession to make.
What's that?
I is no Dr. Hohlman. I made him up. But I hope we can keep playing our game. I do enjoy having a little danger in my life. See you same time next week.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. That was The Game, written, directed, and produced by Michael Cohn. I hope you enjoyed that mind bender. That was also screened at the Death Parade Film Fest in 2019 to a packed audience, and we were very honored to also have it screening on our YouTube channel. So with us today, the one and only Michael Cohn. Thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. Glad to be here.
So, Michael, I got to ask first and foremost, when I saw it, my first vision or image in my mind was David Fincher.
Yeah.
The way that you like to play games and leave the audience a little unsettled. You have the two characters that are you find out they're kind of playing games on each other. And the young lady isn't who she seems. The doctor isn't who he seems, and it kind of reverses the roles. And that's something that David Fincher likes to do. Was that an influence for you? Was he a director?
As directors go, I love Fincher's work, but I also love David Lynch and Alfred Hitchcock and Akira Kurosawa and Stanley Kubrick. And so, to whatever extent that this sort of soup of the directors influences my thinking, I'm sure that, it's a wonderful compliment to be compared to Fincher, at least as far as a style or an approach goes. But I've always loved mysteries, and I love mysteries regarding both film and literature. So I'm drawn to stories where the audience feels like they're settling in, and as they're watching something, they're trying to understand what's happening, and they're trying to get ahead of the story, but they can't because they really don't know what's going to happen next. And I think for me as a viewer, that's always a sort of a delicious experience. So as a writer, even for a short film project, I want to inspire that feeling in the viewer where they really don't know until the last possible moment what the larger truths of the story are, or what the revelation is. It comes at the last minute.
Is that something that when you start a project, you think about, I'm not going to let the audience try to guess this, what's happening next?
No, I don't think it's something I do consciously. When I first started writing this script, it was really just a series of sketches about a psychiatrist and a 7-year-old girl. And she was very perceptive and very manipulative. And it was sort of a study of this relationship between this very earnest therapist and this highly manipulative, emotionally skilled young girl. And in a weird sort of way, I probably spent a month just working with these different scenes. And there was a moment in an early draft of this where this young girl, not an adult woman, but a young girl, goes into a closet and forces this adult therapist to follow her in. And she plays this weird kind of hide and seek game in the dark with him. And I found that to be really fascinating. And that then slowly transformed into an older character, a young woman, and a kind of game that she was playing with him. And then that evolved eventually into the idea that they're playing a game with one another. And at a certain point, the audience believes they completely understand the reality of the game, and they don't find out until quite late that it's actually a game being played inside of a game at a much deeper level. And that ultimately, in the final moment, both the character and we realize that she's playing a game on an entirely different level and in a much more dangerous way than even he was aware of, even though he was a willing participant. So I like the mysterious aspects of it, but it's not like I consciously set out to write that kind of mystery. It was an evolution that took place over a few months.
Yeah, I found the film very fascinating. I really did enjoy your two lead actor and actresses' performance in this. So, what was the hardest scene for them to do?
I know for the actress, because she had to sit in makeup for about 4 hours before we started shooting, and because she was naturally claustrophobic, when we were shooting in the closet and it was nearly dark and she had to sort of slip back into the coats and she was singing that song, we had to do many takes of that. We were having all kinds of technical problems. She was having trouble remembering the day and she was tired. And so for a whole variety of reasons, we had to keep doing it over and over again. And she was becoming increasingly claustrophobic. We weren't actually shooting it in a closet. We took a bedroom in my house and we transformed it to a closet with just flyaway walls. But it felt to her like it was real because everything was closed in around her and she was tucked in against this wall with these coats sort of enveloping her. And I think after the third or fourth take, she just completely freaked out and we had to just stop. She needed to rest and relax. And then we went back to it a short while later. I know for her, that was probably the most difficult thing.
That's incredible to freak out like that. Yeah. If you have someone with that type of phobia, yeah, you're going to freak out going like, yeah, I'm not really in a closet, but it feels like a closet. I want to smash my way out of it.
Yeah. And I think because it was also very warm in there and it got increasingly warm and she had all this makeup on that was making her face very uncomfortable, very itchy, all the physical discomfort added to all the emotional discomfort, and she just finally kind of cracked. But I've been in situations before where an actor or an actress they reach a saturation point of stress, and hopefully you recognize that before it gets too severe, and everybody takes a break, you give them a chance to drink some water and rest, and then you come back to it and you try one more time or 5 more times. Yeah.
And what's with the I'm sorry, please, Anthony, go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. Well, I was intrigued with the film. I found the makeup on the girl particularly disturbing because I'd seen the game at least 3 or 4 times, and each time I found a little piece of a detail from her makeup that kind of had me unsettled. And I'm like, wow, I'm trying to think. I'm using all the films in my head. I'm trying to compare it with another film that had similar makeup, and I just can't do it. I don't know where or how you came up with that kind of look for her burn look after she, was it nail polish, right? And then she lit herself on fire. That was an amazing,
that's a story.
Amazing effect.
Yeah. Well, as a side note, when we first started in pre-production, the plan was to have all of her makeup as prosthetic. So I worked with a very talented makeup artist in Austin, and we had Denise, the actress, travel to Austin with me, and she was going to have her entire head in plaster of Paris. That was the plan. I didn't know at the time that Denise was really claustrophobic. And so when we laid her down and encased her head in plaster of Paris, she only needed to stay still for about 15 or 20 minutes for it to cure enough to solidify. But about 5 minutes in, she just had a panic attack and had to sit up and have the thing broken off of her head. And so the mold was more or less ruined, and she refused to let us do it again. So the makeup artist in Austin attempted to reconstruct the broken mold, and ultimately it failed. And so we had to come up with a completely different approach. And that approach was that the makeup artist would essentially texturize her face and give me a skin texture map to work with, so that after we were done shooting, I then went in with a visual effects artist and I created the master plates in Photoshop, believe it or not, and he took them into After Effects in 3D. And so, for instance, we had to remove her nose, remove her ears, widen her mouth, take her eyebrows away. All that was done with individual frames in Photoshop that became reference frames in After Effects. So the real makeup was digital as opposed to physical, but all the texturing on her face was actually prosthetic makeup, but all the removal was done digitally.
Wow, incredible job. I knew I hadn't seen that before. That's and thank you for the explanation. We definitely love getting into the nitty-gritty in the films. We like talking about the inspiration behind it. Kevin likes talking about comparisons between different genres and filmmakers. I like talking about the camera angles, the lighting, the practical effects, because as a filmmaker, I'm kind of writing notes of myself like, oh, I should remember next time you do that way, so thank you for the explanation. And sometimes you don't really want to peel back the curtain too much because maybe you have a nice trick that you want to be known for, but that was a really nice part of the film. I thought really set her character apart.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to share. I actually find the process of digital makeup to be really interesting. And I know it's becoming more and more prevalent and more common. I don't know, Walking Dead has probably been one of those shows where it's been used on almost an industrial scale,
right.
Digital makeup. So the software out there in the world now, people, are doing incredible things with effects with their laptops. So yeah, we were just part of that process.
I was very intrigued by where you shot. I am assuming, was that in your home?
In my house.
In your house? The lighting that you used was quite impressive in the doctor's home office in a scene. Did you shoot at a particular time of the morning or afternoon to get just that right amount of light? It didn't look like it was overly bright, just perfect natural lighting.
Well, this is one of those circumstances where I think a little bit of just dumb luck was helping us out. The 2 or 3 days that we shot in that office, it was fairly cloudy outside. And that was a good thing because it allowed us to put some HMI lights outside on the front lawn and set them up with basically a big silk topper and just pump a very, very consistent wash of light through the windows and put very soft play of dappled light on the wall. And we could keep that and control that for hours. And because it was fairly cloudy, we didn't have to worry about the huge variations in exposure with the sun coming and going behind clouds. We were worried about that, but it turned out that wasn't a problem. So that was purely that was the whims of nature in Houston.
Is that one of those things where you simply look up in the sky and say, thank you, thank you?
Yes. Yeah. we were able to shoot much more quickly because of that. And the director of photography was delighted that we weren't having to constantly change because of the sun coming and going. Yeah.
Tell me, what inspired you to make the game?
Well, if you see any of my other films, you'll know I have a fairly dark sensibility. So, as a matter of fact, I'm thinking very seriously about taking the sort of kernel of the narrative idea in the game and develop it into a TV series. Because I actually believe that the character of Ava is extraordinarily rich in its possibilities because of the way that she deceived her own psychotherapist who was trying to help her. And, you know, when you recognize at the very end of the story that she probably lied about everything and absolutely nothing she said was true. So if nothing she said was true, then everything that she was describing, the whole thing is just a fiction. And therefore, what of any of that is real? And I'm actually really interested in that. I'm interested in building on that idea for her character. I can kind of imagine her being predatory in a very diabolical way and going about her life and doing this sort of thing to lots of different people.
So, Michael, can you tell me what you've been working on during the lockdown? Have you been putting out any scripts or any ideas for new films? You talked about making the core of the game a feature. Have you expanded on that, anything?
Well, not so much a feature, but possibly a television series.
Television series, yes.
Or a web series. Yeah, and beyond that, I've been working for some time on what to me anyway is a really interesting sci-fi epic. You know, the problem with the sci-fi epic script is that when you're finished, you have to recognize that if it's going to cost $200 million to produce, your chances are really minimal of having it ever made.
Right.
But it's still really interesting to me as raw narrative material, so I can't help myself. So I've been bouncing back and forth between those two, but I think the one I'm going to gravitate more toward in the next 6 months or a year is going to be trying to expand the game into a full-blown TV series idea with the pilot and the Bible and the whole thing.
Now, I did have a question. Oh, sorry. I did have a question regarding the game. And I find it to be a challenge, especially for horror shorts or features, to get that kind of feeling, that thrill of that raw fear inside you without going into any blood or gore. I think The Conjuring would be a good example of a movie that had a lot of chills and jump scares, but you didn't see the over-the-top kind of grotesqueness that you would see in other films that kind of hit you over the head. You want to talk a little bit about making a game where it is deeply unsettling, but at the same time, I think the PG rating can be what, PG or PG-13?
Yeah, that's an interesting question about the rating. I'm honestly not sure how to rate the film, because there's one expletive in the film, but it's so fleeting, and because it screamed to the top of her lungs during the struggle, most people probably don't even recognize it as having happened. So if you remove that as an element for consideration, most of what's really unsettling about it is what's implied. And so, PG-13, I suppose. But, back to your question, I'm much more interested in psychology and the nuances of the psychology of mysteries and thrillers. And it's not that I have not disliked every gore and splatter film I've seen. I haven't. There are some that I think are really amazing and rise to the level of art. But for this story anyway, I was much more interested in crafting a narrative that made a reader and then a viewer feel more and more uneasy. And at the point where she goes into the closet and he follows her in, I really wanted the audience to start to feel a sort of a palpable sense of dread. And I wanted that to build at least to a point. So I was conscious of a lot of conventions and tropes in horror, and I was making an effort both in the directing and in the writing to not fall back on any of those, but to try to create something that was just genuinely disturbing. and my hope was that by the very end, when the audience realizes the implications of what he's found, the loaded gun and the car drives away, that that sense of being unsettled lingers. So after it fades to black, it leaves the viewer feeling like they have a deeper understanding, and the deeper understanding has implications that are really creepy.
Very true. Go ahead, Kevin.
Well, I was just thinking that it seemed that if you did have any kind of opportunity for gore in this, it would seem like out of place with this type of story. It's gory enough and intense enough with just these characters that any kind of explicit showing of blood and so forth would be kind of counterproductive. Is that kind of how you looked at it too?
Yeah, I think so. As a matter of fact, the only real, when she's in the closet and she takes the mask off, the only time we see any red is the lipstick. And the way it's applied and kind of smeared on her lips, and a bit of it ends up on his cheek. But that was, for me, that was just, it was a reference as a color, and it's associated obviously with blood and with gore, but it wasn't the same thing at all. It was her mouth. And so I made a conscious decision that I wanted her to have very heavy red lipstick on, so that in that one moment when she comes up very close to the camera and we finally really get to see her face clearly, we would see a bit of red around her mouth. And that was, again, that was just symbolic, an association of blood. But you're right. I didn't feel like it was necessary to show blood on him or on her.
Right.
I think it's just a testament to how layered and nuanced, as you mentioned, the game is, and a relatively short showing. I think it came in at just under 14 minutes, and we can talk about this for 40 minutes. I like films that give you so much in such a small package that, I think part of the fun we have here is just unwrapping the little details and talking about, what went on. I think that's what we really enjoy, and hopefully I think that's what the audience gets out of it, because although this is screened on YouTube, this would be the same kind of format if, let's say, we rented out a theater and, we brought the audience in, we screened the movie, and then we brought you on stage. I hope that, the audience would get that kind of experience, or renting or purchasing a movie, and then after the movie, you get to watch the behind the scenes footage. So I'm a huge fan of that. I love the little nuts and bolts that went into it. And thank you very much for providing it, because it just makes the film all that much more enjoyable once you know everything that went into it.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad I could share. I really enjoyed talking about it.
So welcome. Michael,
yeah.
Can you let people know where they can find you?
Where they can find me?
Yep.
You mean like my physical address where they can come?
No, yeah, sure. I'm going to send all my horror fans to your house, bring you a pizza.
Where do you live, Michael?
From Anthony.
I think he's talking about social media.
Where can we find you on the interwebs?
I confess that I don't use Facebook, and I don't have a website for myself. So the only two places where there's kind of a repository of some of my work is on Vimeo, and and IMDb, but that's not social media. That's just a database. Yeah. And I live there like everybody else, with a page with all this information. But no, I in that way, I suppose I'm very old fashioned. I have not created a social media presence for myself.
Well, you have a platform on the Death Parade Film Fest. I can tell you that for sure.
Well, that's wonderful to hear. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to thank Michael for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed The Game by Michael Cohn. It was a thriller. It was a mind-bending. And if you need to watch it 2 or 3 times just to get all the little details, go ahead, especially after watching this, now that you know what to look for. Well, for myself, Anthony DeRowan, Kevin Nicholson, Joe Flynn, and our guest, Michael Cohn, thank you for joining us, and you enjoy horror.
Thank you, Michael.
Oh,
Thank
you're
you,
very
Michael.
welcome. Thank you, all three of you. That was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Oh, no.